So this is the sewing machine that I'm using. It is a treadle machine. It is a basic, this one happens to be a white rotary treadle, and that's the project I'm working on. I don't know if that's going to show up real well or not, but anyway, I've had questions and questions about what kind of machine is that? How do you set it up? And I know I've answered it in previous videos, but I'm going to do it again. The basic requirement to make this kind of stitching work is only that you have a standard machine. There's nothing fancy about it. It isn't satin stitching, setting, or anything else. It's a basic sewing machine with a embroidery thread in it, and the thread is let me get a spool to show you. Here's the bobbin. Here's the bobbin case. This is the kind of thread I'm using. This is normal. This happens to be Coats & Clark 40 weight machine embroidery thread, polyester. In the bobbin I'm using a Coats & Clark with a labeled as bobbin thread, and it's really quite a bit thinner. I don't see a number on it, but anyway, it's again polyester, and it's for the bobbin, and because it's so thin you can fit quite a lot on the bobbin. When you do this, if you have a machine that you can drop the feed dogs, that will be the thing to do. If you don't have a machine where you can drop the feed dogs, you can do what I did for this machine, and that is remove them. Here's the feed dogs from this machine. They come out with just a couple of, in this one it was just one screw, and they come right out. So it's easy to do if you're so inclined, and they're easy to put back together if you ever want to do normal stitching on your machine again. Some machines you can get a bobbin or a throat plate cover that will cover over those feed dogs. I've not tried that because I can't find one that fit any of my old machines, but it could happen. You could find one of those, and if your feed dogs don't drop, you could do it that way. The machines that I find the best are the ones that have a separate bobbin case where the bobbin goes in the machine upright. So in this one, the thread goes through the little thing like this, and it goes into the machine like that, so that the bobbin is always pulling up. So it's this vertical bobbin format. The kind where you will drop the bobbin in, and they would go into the bobbin area flat like this. I find they don't work as well as this style. So, but theoretically they all should work. So the fabric does not have any stabilizer on the back. The secret here is to keep it very tight in the hoop. So it's just a regular embroidery hoop. The fabric is tight as I can get it in there, and you'll want to make sure that you try to keep it that way. One thing that I have found is pull on it to tighten it top and bottom, and side and to side, but don't pull too hard on the bias. Here's the straight grain this way and that way. So if I pull here, 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 and here to tighten it up, that's fine. If I pull too hard across this way, I stretch it, and it'll make for puckers. So normal stitching. You move the hoop to create the stitch length. So it doesn't matter what your stitch length is set to, because it's not going to matter. It's not the feed dogs are not adjusting the length of the stitches. You're doing it by hand, so you can not worry about that setting. Just everything is determined by how fast you run the machine and how fast you move the hoop back and forth. Slower is better. If you get to running the machine really fast and moving the hoop really slow, you end up with 1,000,000 stitches per inch, and you're not making embroidery, you're making a lot of straight stitches. So it takes practice to learn how to manipulate the speed of your machine and your work in the hoop. Now, this can easily be done also on a non-treadled machine. Mine is in a treadle because I like the control I can get. Now, a lot of people who have not practiced on a treadle will find that they really have almost no control over it, because they're actually, what usually happens is you're just starting to push that thing too hard. That the action on the pedal needs to be very gentle to get slow action, and it takes practice to learn that. But you should be able to start and stop that thing without very much hesitation, without, you should be able to stop it in the up position at any point, and that comes from practicing how your feet are operating. And I would recommend, whether you're doing a treadle project or one with standard machine, to just put some fabric and a hoop and play with it for a while before you get started on a real project. I made several scrappy, just playing doodle kinds of things before I started trying to get anything with too much detail in it. And really the reasoning behind that is that it really does, like any skill, it takes practice to get good at it, and to be able to control your motions. And the thing is, those actions, the moving of your hands and the movement of your feet, once you've done it a lot, it becomes second nature. You don't really think about it. You just instinctively do it. And that's when you start to get better at it. I look at the space on the fabric in front of me, and I know where I want the stitches to be, and I don't really have to think about how I'm going to make that happen. It's not, even though I'm moving my foot up and down, and I'm moving the hoop around, and thinking about what colors go where, and how long those stitches should be, and where the shading should be. Those things start to become you know, less like walking and chewing gum at the same time, more like just you don't think about it, you just do it. So anyway, any machine can do this. I find that the kind with the vertical bobbin works better, but I've not tried some of the newer modern machines for this, so I can't say that's going to be the case for all machines. It's the case for my treadle machines, is that the style with the vertical bobbin work better. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me is knowing when to stop. I am working on what's going to sort of be a tree covered hill in the background, and in order to make it look hopefully realistic, I am adding several colors, and that'll go clear across and off the edge there. Anyway, it seems to me that multiple colors makes for more variety and closer to nature. So I'm changing my thread fairly frequently to keep some variety in there, and try and get as much of a specific area as I can that I have in the hoop done at one time. This particular thing that I'm doing is bigger than the hoop, so I have to keep moving it around. Certainly easier if the image that you're making is just the size that's going to fit in the hoop. The important thing to note about that, you can't really get carried away and buy yourself a giant hoop because it won't fit in your machine. The space between the needle and the column of the machine, which probably isn't showing in the picture, is really, you know, you've got a limited space there. So if I had a giant hoop, I could still only quilt on the edge. I wouldn't be able to art quilt. I could only embroider up to a certain point before it hit the end, and I couldn't get in any further. So you've got to get a hoop that is scaled to your machine, and I have found this 10-inch hoop for this particular machine is about as big as I would ever want. If it were much bigger, again, I'd be just only embroidering around the edges of the hoop, and I wouldn't be getting anywhere in the center. So the other thing I found, I tried my first several attempts here. I was using a plastic hoop, and I had very limited success with that because the fabric kept slipping. Even though it was one of those that had a built-in groove to keep the fabric from slipping, it really didn't. I found it to be quite irritating, and it was not worth it. The inexpensive little wooden hoops are fine, and I think better than any of the expensive fancy things that you can buy. You can certainly get one for just a few dollars at your local craft store where they sell all the embroidery items. These are designed for hand embroidery, but it certainly works in the machine. You just need to make sure that it's not so thick that you can't get it under the needle. that would be a pain to have to take the needle out every time you wanted to get the hoop out. So look for a hoop that's thin and wooden. Now some people will wrap some thin fabric around the inside ring, this part of the hoop, to keep the fabric from slipping. I haven't found it necessary to do that myself, but I may try it just to see how it works. It might be worth the effort. Now, like I said, at this point I haven't felt the need to do that. What I'm attempting to do here is, again, add a variety of highlights to keep this from looking too flat. If you can't do that by just visualizing where these things need to go, you could certainly do some marking with one of those marking pens where where a little spritz of water will make it disappear, and that would be maybe a helpful thing if you have a hard time envisioning where you're going. It's certainly not the easiest thing when you've got a large area and you're only focused on a little bit around your needle. It's sometimes easy to lose your way. So there's nothing wrong with marking if you need to. And because I want this particular part of the drawing or painting or whatever it is that I'm calling this, because I want it to look like multiple trees in a distance, I am varying the direction of my stitches instead of having them all run parallel to each other like a satin stitch would be. I'm sort of meandering around and creating what I hope will look more like some natural variation that would happen in a tree. They don't all grow in one direction. Now, right here, I've hit the edge of my hoop to the side of my machine. Let me see if I can show you that. So the edge of the hoop has hit the side here. And so what I need to do to make it so that I can continue sewing a little further is I need to turn it so that I've got more space now to go that way. So now I'm sewing upside down, and I have to remember that, so I make my stitches go still in the direction that it will be viewed from the other way, but I think you can get the picture. So it's a matter in this part of the design, and for most of it really, it's a matter of building up your design in layers of color. You know, if you're used to painting, sometimes you'll mix your colors on a palette ahead of time, but in this case we're mixing them with, we can't mix the colors together ahead of time. We put some in and then build some on top of it, and those combinations of threads within the work are what creates the variation in the color. So, I don't know, let's see if we can get a little closer for a bit here. So do you see where I'm headed? This is supposed to simulate the end of the field here and into some trees. And when all is said and done, I may go back and do some more shading and in some other places that seem to need it. Once the whole thing is done and out of the hoop, I'll be able to look at it as a whole rather than in a bunch of parts. Here's where I'm at so far. Now I'll continue to fill in with this row of tree background across to the edge here. Then I'll do the canopy of this tree, and then I'll finish up this tree. There will be a little bit of this fabric that's not embroidered over, and that will become the sky. But a good portion of the whole thing is going to be covered. Just a little section of it through here and between the branches of the trees. At this point is my plan. If I don't like the way that looks, I can always go back and fill in the sky with embroidery thread too. I don't plan on that, but it certainly could happen. So changing thread again, because I want to get to this side. And I don't have an exact formula of how I do this, but so that this part comes out the same as that part did, but maybe you can see it here. What I have started with, let's see, what I've started with in through here is some sort of well, it looks tan in the picture. It's kind of almost a khaki, army green-ish tan color, but I used that to remember to put your presser foot down. Even though there's no presser foot, we take it off for this. If that isn't down, you don't get tension on the tensioner here, and you get weird stitches. And it actually can build up to quite a knot on the back. And usually, when I start talking and sewing at the same time, I often forget to put that down. And if you didn't know, I think it's interesting to think about. embroidery on sewing machines has been done pretty much since sewing machines were invented. And before there were computer programs to tell the machine what to do, this is how they did it. And as machines changed and advanced, some of the techniques have changed somewhat as well. But this is the basic technique that has been used for over 100 years to do machine embroidery. They wouldn't have used polyester thread. It hadn't been invented yet. They would have probably, most likely, if they could afford it, they would have used silk. And if they didn't have silk, they could easily have also used cotton, and I've done some machine embroidery with cotton quilting thread, and it works okay. It's quite a bit thicker than this thread that I'm using, so at least the quilting thread that I've used has been, you know, I use quilting thread, machine quilting thread that's labeled as 40 weight, and this embroidery thread also labeled as 40 weight. The quilting thread is a lot thicker. 40 weight quilting thread is a lot thicker than 40 weight machine embroidery thread. So it's a very, you know, even though they're calling them the same weight, I would say that they're not. They're different. For me, I find that I like the result better with a thinner thread. And if I can get the there. I had to cut my bobbin thread and I couldn't get under there. Now I need to put some dark in there. Let's see, that would be a good one. I don't know if I showed you this or not either, but let me do that. You know, these are, this is one of those thread cone stands. The thread goes up to the top here, and then it comes down to the top of the machine. And what that allows is for the thread to unwind gently off the top of that spool, rather than having it having the machine have to pull the thread off of the spool and unwind it. And I hope that makes sense. It makes a difference because when the thread is on the top of the machine, on the thread pin, it has to pull the whole weight of the spool as it unwinds. And when it's on a cone stand, it just comes off up, and that makes a difference in the tension. I have tried it with the thread on the top of the machine, and I don't get nearly as good a result. The thread tends to want to snag and pull and cause problems, and it's just a lot easier for me when it's on one of those stands and unwinding freely as they do. I realize now, as I'm doing this, the previous side of the tree, when I did the darker green, I did it before I did the lighter green, so it might end up looking a little different. I don't think it's going to be a problem. If it is, I can always go back and add some more of the lighter green on top to tone it down. But I think it'll be fine. The other thing you may notice, some puckering along the edges here, and unfortunately that means that I was a little loose in the fabric, and the hoop was a little loose and created that issue. I'm going to probably frame this when it's done, and the edges, really, that edge won't show, so I'm not too horribly concerned about it. If you are, and I've done a couple where I was, I found that I could usually press those puckers out if they weren't too bad. So don't despair, there's usually a way to fix it. Now here's an interesting part. If I keep going, the screw on the needle bar will probably hit the edge of this, so, but if I turn it a little, now that screw is not going to be in the way. It's not always as easy to get right up to the edge. So when you're putting your work in the hoop, you got to remember to leave yourself enough space between the edge of the hoop and the work to be able to get to it. But by turning it that direction, I was able to get out of the way of it, and it looks like we're going to be fine. Sometimes it feels like all you do is change your thread, but it's not that bad of a problem, because it only takes a minute to change the thread. It takes me longer to cut the back when I can't pick it up and see it. I always start by pulling the bobbin thread up to the top because I don't want to have a bunch of tangles on the back, little bird nesty things that can happen with those threads if they're not on the top. And then I cut them off, and you can, if you want to finish those in a nice way, what you can do is bury them back to the back of the work. You would leave them long enough so that you could get them through a needle, and then pull them through to the back, and then tuck those thread tails underneath some of the stitching in the back, just like you would finish regular embroidery. I've just been cutting them off because this is a project that's not going to have the opportunity for it to come undone. It's going to be framed and likely under glass, so I'm not too worried about it. And usually what I do anyway is where I know I'm going to stop, what I try to do is remember to do several stitches back and forth close to each other before I cut it off, and that's sort of like doing that sort of back tacking that you would do on regular sewing. So there's the other side of the trees. I'll go all the way across with this tree section. I'll evaluate my colors, see if I need to change by adding any additional color to the design, and then I'll start working on the top parts of the tree, of the big trees, and then decide if I need any other design elements in here to make it work. So I'm gonna keep working, and I'll show you the progress soon. So I think you can start to see it filling in. The tree section is going to be more the same. I need to add more fullness in a couple of spots. I'm going to add a couple of different colors to create more depth, and the main part really is going to be filling in this big tree, which is going to actually, even once the branches are in, it's going to overlap this one some. So it's going to be a lot to include yet, but I think it's getting close to being done. I should have just one more video to go to finish it all off. So we'll do that soon.